So first off, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Florence. I'm one of the local activists in the Green Party in Lambeth, and I'm going to be chairing this discussion this evening, which hopefully will be a really kind of interesting and fun discussion for anyone that's thinking about standing as a councillor, because we do have our council elections coming up in May this year. So I'm really excited this evening to be joined by a couple of really amazing councillors. So sorry, I'm just having some technical difficulties. So we're being joined by Magid Magid, Charlie and Shahin. Cleo will be joining us a bit later at 8:15. So the order that we're going to go in is I'm going to do a bit of talking about Lambeth, then we're going to go into the panel discussion, then at 8 we're going to have a short break, and then Cleo's going to join at 8:15 as well as the other panelists, and we'll hear from Cleo, and then if there are any more questions for Cleo, and there'll be opportunities for questions during it as well, then that will go on until then, and yeah, that's the order that we'll be going in. So I'll introduce Cleo first, even though she isn't actually here yet. So Cleo Lake is a Bristol-born artist, activist and politician. She was elected as a councillor in 2016 and served as the Lord Mayor of Bristol between 2018 and 2019. She's been involved in the arts and culture sector for almost 2 decades and is currently an actress with the Shiva Soul Ensemble and the director of an international arts organisation called Black Artists on the Move. She's also a dance therapist and is a research associate at Bristol University on decolonising memory, digital bodies in movement. Charlie is a councillor in South Somerset. He was elected in 2019 and he'd recently moved there from the West Midlands. He's married with 2 teenage children and has a professional background in education and small business. He's registered disabled and has progressive multiple sclerosis, and he's passionate about sport, exercise and active travel. Magid Magid was elected to Sheffield Council in 2016. He was the Lord Mayor of Sheffield between 2018 and 2019. In May 2019, he was elected as MEP for Yorkshire and the Humber. And then in 2021, he set up the Union of Justice, which is an organisation dedicated to racial justice and climate justice. And then we've got Shahin Ashraf. She's a councillor on Solihull Council. She's also the head of global advocacy for Islamic relief worldwide, and in her spare time she enjoys reading and is a keen walker. So yeah, all of our speakers are very interesting and accomplished people, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from them in a bit. First, I'm going to do a bit of background on Lambeth, which, as I recognise a lot of people on this call, I'm sure most of you already know this, but I will go through it anyway. So there are roughly 300,000 people living in Lambeth, and 87,000 of those people are living in poverty. Lambeth is one of the most densely populated places in the country, and 70% of the residents live in flats. A quarter of the people who live in Lambeth are Black Caribbean or Black African, and there's also a large Portuguese community here. Currently on the council we have 63 councillors, and they represent 21 wards. So that's 3 councillors per ward, and at the moment there are 57 Labour councillors, 5 Green councillors and 1 Conservative councillor. So it's a bit of a, yeah, the Labour just have most of the control in the council. In the next election, they'll be moving to a mixture of 3 and 2 council wards, and the ward boundaries are also changing in a lot of places. Wards are kind of disappearing and being recreated. So I think it creates quite a unique opportunity for us to maybe target places that are a bit new, and yeah, it should be a good opportunity for us. And at the election this year, we're hoping to at least double our number of councillors on the council, but hopefully get even more than that, so we can push them to be better for the residents of Lambeth and have a bit more influence. So that is enough from me. If we can go to the panelists now. So I think if we start with Charlie, if you could tell us a bit about why you decided to put yourself forward for the council, and you know, what your time on the council has been like, that would be great.
Right, well, thank you, Florence, for that. Yeah, I live in the middle of Somerset. I live about 10-minute drive from Glastonbury. So it's kind of different to Lambeth, I guess, in many, many ways. It's and yeah, what brought me into green politics is the climate emergency. It is the one issue, existential issue, that we have to grapple with, and we need a political party that's devoted to it. Here in Somerset, we are split very much between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems, and it's been that way for decades. There's been the occasional Green Councillor, but not enough of us, and we need more of us. What we do have is lots and lots of dedicated activists involved in community farms, in conservation work, all sorts of things, and they're brilliant, and I try and support them as much as I can, but none of them want to be councillors. I'm registered disabled. I've got, as you said, Florence, I've got MS. I'm a partial wheelchair user, and I can't be active in a lot of these activities that I would love to be. And it's a shame that we moved to Somerset, and we moved here, and there's so much I now can't do. What I can do is the politics, though. I can read, I can write, I can speak, I can do motions, I can be in the council chamber, I can make sure that the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, Labour focus on the climate, focus on the green issues. But I can't do it on my own, and I need more people, and we've got elections coming up in May, and I'm busily recruiting at the moment other Greens to come and join me, to come and help out. We've got quite a few, but we need some more. So it's a climate emergency that got me into it, Florence, really. And I'm a big campaigner for PR, obviously, because we need a fair voting system. We really, really do. So many people here in Somerset over many years have voted Green and only got a tiny handful of councillors. A proper proportional system means we would hold the balance of power and we would deliver on the climate emergency. So that's something I'm big on campaigning on. So yeah, that's really what I'm all about. It's the climate emergency. I'm not traditional. I'm not a party man. I like to get things done. I'm a man of action. I want to see action taking place to solve our environmental problems here. And I'm happy to work with others, okay? But we can only deliver meaningful change if we have a significant number of Greens in the room, okay, devoted to the climate. So that's what brought me into politics. What do I think Florence said, what do I enjoy about it? I enjoy delivering for my residents as much as I can. Yeah, we get grief, that's what councillors do. Yeah, people complain, but and you hear about that, but you can really make a difference to individual people's lives, and they are grateful. And just by knowing who you know in the council, the officers, doing the research for them, just making a difference to their lives, seeing them happier, that's what I really enjoy. So yeah, so that's what got me into being a councillor. You know, joining South Somerset District Council. I'm standing again. We got a new unitary council election in May this year. It's a one massive council for the whole of Somerset. It's not going to work. It's a Conservative idea. Touch wood, we'll get lots more Greens elected, and we can begin to really, I think, make a difference in the county. So is that enough, Florence? That's in a nutshell why I became a councillor. Even though I'm disabled, I'm huge on sport and active travel. We need more wheelchair accessible paths that we're working on. We need to get cars off the road, get more bikes on the road. We're working on that. I can't do it on my own. I need more Greens with me in May. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. And Shahin, what has your experience been like on Solihull Council? Because obviously that's a more kind of urban place, maybe a bit more similar to Lambeth.
Thank you, Florence, and welcome everyone. It's good to be here this evening. Yeah, I mean, so for me, it's very different to what's been described. To sum it up, I came into the Green Party and I became an accidental politician, really. And for me, what summed it up was that Islamophobia, basically, what happened was I recently moved to the borough. And when I moved to the borough, I think 3 weeks later, one of the main parties had tweeted something about Muslims must leave this country, you know, and for me, that was the thing that led me to being part of the Green Party. Interestingly, what happened was I was standing outside at the council house as a one-woman protest. And I remember standing outside, and the only kind of people that came up to me were people from the Green Party, who then said, actually, we'll stand by your side. You're not alone. And for me, that was in itself, you know, part of the camaraderie that we still we carry with us to today. Again, you know, this incident of this individual councillor, his racist commentary, you know, still remains online today. And, you know, he was readmitted to his party 2 years later. And, you know, just recently, you might have seen the news of other politicians being, you know, with individuals who had gone through Islamophobia. And for me, I think it's a really important thing for where I stand and where I am and my identity. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that brought me to the party. And again, you know, an accidental politician. But being an accidental politician has meant that since I was elected, I was elected in the borough of Solihull in Shirley South Ward. Solihull itself is a very rich borough. But what you do see is inequalities between the north and the south of the borough. In the south of the borough to the north of the borough, you see between a 10 to 12 year life expectancy gap. And for me, I think these are the kind of things that make a real difference. I came into, I'm now part of the opposition spokesperson on special education needs. I'm also part of the governance committee. I'm also part of the person that pushes a lot on special education needs, specifically in a borough that sees a tangible difference between, again, what happens in the north and what happens in the south. You know, you have more schooling and more PRUs, which are pupil referral units in the north, and in the south you see, you know, more wealthier area that is doing, you know, favorably well. But, you know, in between them, there's only probably a couple of miles difference. And for me, that's one of the reasons why I joined, and that's why I was elected. And on a global level, I'm a humanitarian, and you know, interestingly, what was spoken about around climate significantly is what I deal with. I deal with climate, I deal with just transition, I talk about adaptation. I'm on the, particularly when I was at COP last year, you know, I happened to be part of the cabinet office that dealt with climate issues. We were working alongside Alok Sharma, particularly as an INGO groups of INGOs who tackled two areas. One was around mitigation and the other one was around adaptation. How do we in this day and age adapt to climate change? But then what happens when we get to wherever we need to get to, which is net zero? What happens with the just transition then? How do people get new jobs in this new era of what we would call industrial, you know, the fourth industrial revolution? But on a local level, Florence, you know, lots to do with potholes, lots to do with education, lots to do with getting people into schooling. And it's the area that I love. I love being around people, and I love being around my constituents. You know, I managed to get 68% of the vote, and actually Magid came and campaigned for me. So whilst all these things came to a fore, I mean, I'm on my third year now, and I've absolutely enjoyed it. You know, I'm one of those individuals that came into politics not knowing that this is probably what I want to do. You know, I'm one of those children that was the first wave of immigrants that came from Kashmir, who lived in the inner city Birmingham. You know, I grew up in relative poverty with loads of racial tension around me. I was part of the kind of transverse into kind of cultural Black, West Indian, Sikh, Pakistani, Kashmiri cultures. You know, all I saw was poverty, crime. You know, I saw everything that was enveloped in a sense of community and justice, where the imam and the pastor came together to build this shared community and belonging. But I think one of the defining moments for me was when I was a child, was the strife that was just up the road from us, which was the Handsworth riots. And that resulted in police brutality, unemployment, you know, and the social injustice that you saw. And I think that's what spurs me on to be the councillor that I am today. Back over to you, Florence.
Thank you. Thanks. That was great. And so, Magid, so you were quite young when you were first elected. So it'd be interesting to hear kind of what that was like, you know, being a young person, being a councillor, like, you know, what was that like with like your career? That kind of thing would be really interesting. I'd be interested.
Definitely. First and foremost, it's a real pleasure to be joining and so many wonderful people. And Charlie, I don't think we've met before, but it's amazing to hear all the amazing stuff that you're doing in Glastonbury. Assalamu alaikum, Shahin. Lovely to share this platform with you again, and everyone that's joining us today as well. So it was really interesting just to kind of hear from Charlie and Shahin the reasons, I guess, how they kind of ended up being a councillor. So for me, I remember at the time I didn't know any Greens. I didn't know anyone who was a councillor, to be specific, but it was always that one thing for me was trying to save the local library from closing. And as we know, local libraries are more than just places where we just hire books. Like, if anything, like, it's one of the very few places in society where you can just sit down without being expected to pay for anything. You can just exist. But of course, it provides so much service for the community and stuff. And due to austerity, one of the main impacts of that was that some of the local libraries had to be closing down. So I joined that campaign, and then I kind of just through that just learned who makes decisions, who makes all the local decisions. And I found out through speaking to people, watching YouTube videos, reading who the local councillors are, how they make decisions. And then I'd reach out to these councillors, and then I kind of started to realize I couldn't keep on asking the wrong people to do the right thing. So then I was like, okay, well, how can I become a councillor? And then I decided to join the Greens at the time, just because, interestingly enough, nothing to do with the climate or environment whatsoever. It was mainly because that the Greens was the only party that had consistently always had a red line against austerity, always stood up for free education, a lot of their foreign policy, everything in terms of a lot of my values and principles align best with the Green Party. And of course, we've only got one planet, and we need to live within our means, of course. And then I kind of just joined the Greens, and I'll be honest with you, even when I joined the Greens, nobody said nobody like suggested or asked me if I wanted to be a councillor, because I guess I was still pretty new. Nobody knew me, kind of thing. But of course, just, you know, you had to kind of like, I instantly like volunteered to be the fundraising rep kind of thing. And then the next year I kind of stood in the ward that I kind of lived in, and it was a new ward because we had a boundary changes and stuff. And it was a really, it was an exciting time. Like, I was like, even though Sheffield's got a very large Somali community, and I was the first Somali on Sheffield City Council. So it was just a case of just getting people on board, but also getting people to believe that in the ward that I was standing in, where we've never had a Green councillor, yes, we can get elected. Like, yes, it is possible. This is what we kind of need to do and stuff like that. But it was just, honestly, it's amazing. I think one of my favorite things about being a councillor is you really get to see the direct impact that you're having. It's not like, I guess, if you're an MP or whether, it's like when you're a councillor, you'll be stopping one of your local residents from being evicted, and you'll actually see the impact that it's kind of having. You'll be like, you work with different community groups, you kind of like look for win-win. It is so rewarding. But at the same time, Florence, it's really difficult. It's not like you can switch off after 5 p.m. and I'm sure like Shahin and Charlie will kind of test to that. It just seems like there's always, especially when you kind of integrate it, there's always things that need to be done. It's very problem solving heavy kind of thing, which I really kind of enjoyed. And you kind of like, it's thoroughly rewarding, but at the same time it's difficult. I'm sure we'll get into the challenges of being a councillor, but it's definitely the pros outweigh it. But it also, just to answer your question as well, what it was like being a young person, it's honestly, it's at the time, like, so Sheffield City Council is the third largest local authority in the country, following Birmingham City Council and Manchester City Council. Population of 600,000. So it's a very big council, and it can be a bit intimidating. But of course, at the time we had, like, it was when I got elected, we had 4 Green councillors. Now we've got 13, which is amazing. Hopefully we'll get a lot more. And for those that don't know, Sheffield Greens, so we kind of, we're part of the administration. So we've got 3 Green and councillors who are doing great jobs in, and Douglas, Allison, and Paul, who part of the cabinets. So yes, it was very daunting. I'll be honest with you. Of course, imposter syndrome is a real thing, especially like where I don't know. Of course, you can go and watch full councils to kind of see what it's like and stuff like that. And you can like shadow some of the councils and stuff, which is all really helpful, but nothing really kind of prepares you for it kind of thing. And of course, the thing is, it's what I would say is like, even if like everybody brings something different, all our set of councillors, everyone's got different strengths. Someone's like really analytical. So it's not like you have to be this amazing, like with amazing rhetoric and you're a great speaker, and that's not you work as a team, and that's one of the benefits of, like, hopefully, I'm sure there are some lone Green councillors and I'm sure it's a bit difficult, but it's on the whole, you are working a team, you lean on each other and you work to each other's strengths and stuff like that. So you have got that to kind of work with, but it's one of the most rewarding things. And as well, it's like, it's not like you get paid loads of money for it as well. A lot of the time you're working ridiculous amounts of hours based. I'd like to think, especially with Green councillors, even to get elected, we have to work twice as hard as anybody else because we haven't got those like, so it's really rewarding, and you really see the impact that you can have. And I think a lot of people are slowly starting to wake up to like, we would have never thought in Sheffield, let alone we would have not had only 13 councils, we would have like taken out the leader of the council and be in administration. And so it's just time changes, and I guess we just choose whether we kind of keep up with that or not. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Before we move on to any questions, do any of our panelists have any kind of comments or questions based on what any of the other panelists have said, or anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'd love to kind of just get like from Charlie's perspective, it's like, did you feel, as somebody say who says disabled, did you feel like you got support not only within the Green group but also within the council? Because I'm assuming there'll be some people who would be thinking to themselves like, oh, do you know what, like, I've got this disability or whatever, like, is it positive? Like, will there be like support from the council or whatever? Did you feel generally supported?
Well, it's very timely you say that, actually, Magid. Because of COVID, when we've all been on Zoom, that has really helped me big time, because it means I don't have to get a helper to put me in a car, travel, get out the other end, etc. So, and I've got so many rural parish councils I have to go to, and they've been on Zoom, and that's been really, really good, actually. Now it's tapering down a bit, and we're going back to meeting face to face. It's a little bit more problematic. I'm on the scrutiny committee and I'm the education strategy committee, and the health and wellbeing as well. They're still Zooming, but a lot of the formal meetings are now kicking back into face to face. So that's an issue. So to answer your question, COVID has helped me as a disabled person. When it comes to being elected and the electioneering, that's a bit more tricky. I rely on goodwill from folk, and you want to feel as like you're not taking advantage, but they are out there. And you've got to spend a lot of time cultivating your friends and your helpers and getting them on side so they'll help you out. But I also say there's the Association of Green Councillors, which I'm sure Shahin and yourself are aware of. They're brilliant. They're really, really good. I can just go onto Facebook and find out what's going on there, and I get loads and loads of help from folk. I've made quite a few online friends via the AGC, and so that's been another source of help, really. If I'm struggling intellectually with a motion or a policy, I know where to go. So I kind of, so I hope that answers that. Yeah.
Definitely. Just a quick, I'm just curious, Shahin, quick question for Shahin. Is, because I guess as councillors, we've all got our own lives as well. Like, it's like life doesn't stop, family, children, but not only that as well, work. So, but the thing as well, even within Sheffield, like the Green Councillors, everyone works differently. Like it's how, like, do you stay on top in terms of like with your family as well as the work that you do? Like, how do you juggle all of that basically?
So to answer your question, I would say with great difficulty. I think what I do is divide up my time, and where there's more time so I know definitely before elections, try and take annual leave 6 weeks before everybody's, so I've got that in my slot. Also, you know, weekends, my weekends are taken up. You know, when we go drop leaflets to people's doors, I'll take my kids with me. You know, I've got them signed up on the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, and one of their skills is to support campaigning. The campaigning support is delivering leaflets for me, and they got, so then Max is our other counsellor, he's the one that's looking after them. So
great.
Yeah, so the little things like that. I mean, look, at the end of the day, your constituents mean a lot to you. You know, they're the ones that you're really trying to help. I've got mostly disabled residents and, you know, people, elderly residents, you know, some with disabilities. I mean, most of my people are having hip operations anytime now, once COVID is done. And what you will see is, I think when you go around traveling around your borough, these are the people that will help you. These are the people that have baked the cake when you know you're desperately in need of sugar. They're the ones that will give you the cup of tea. They're the ones that will really kind of encourage you. You're doing well, you're doing well. I think all that, you know, at some point you need that kind of affirmation, right? That, you know, you're doing well, you get it. My job is, I have to say, the first year I became a counsellor, it was tough because I was doing a lot of international traveling. So I was in Ethiopia at one point, and then I asked to be on a Zoom meeting, and they said to me, Shahin, nobody does Zoom meetings. And literally a year later, we were all on Zoom. But interestingly, yeah, it was difficult the first year whilst I was traveling, juggling my role as a humanitarian. But, you know, one of the things is what you see at a global level, Magid, is the same kind of thing that you see at a local level. So somebody's struggling on the southern Somali border of Ethiopia, and they're struggling with climate change. They're very similar problem here. It's not the same, but there are very similar, different similarities to that. And you just see people around the world that are just very similar in their behaviors and in their the way that they are. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but you manage, and I love it because you find the time. You find the time to deal with. I'm dealing at the moment with a young girl who's experiencing racism in school, and it's unbelievable that the head teacher is unable to understand the predicament of a young girl who is going through racism because she has not had to go through it herself. And she's like, well, we never experienced it when we, and you're like, yeah, it's a different age. But yeah, lots of those things that are coming to the fore at the moment. But thank you for your question. And thank you, Charlie, as well, because I think one of the brilliant things is understanding that often we speak for people with disability. And it's nice to hear that you can reach out to the AGC and there's people around you that can support you on these issues. And for me, you know, dealing with my elderly residents and who are having hip replacements, and also realizing that within the council, you know, sometimes the budgetary needs don't actually meet their needs within the borough. And for me, talking to individuals who are going through it themselves really helps. So now with different councillors around, I know Magid, we've been on a couple of these things now, but you see different councillors and you can actually learn from different people and say, look, maybe this is an answer. And that's the brilliant thing with the Green Party. You can pick up on anyone and they'll give you an answer to something. Back over to you, Florence.
Thank you. Does anyone in our audience have any questions for any of our panelists or all of our panelists? I also have more questions, so if no one does have any questions, then I have some.
Do you have a Q&A feature or the chat box?
Oh, is there?
I don't think there is a, but no, it's, I'll just double checking.
I can see
Also,
Chris Glenn has his hand up.
Yeah. That. Okay, Chris, do you want to ask your question? Oh, wait. Do we need to unmute you? Perhaps. Oh, there we go. Sorry, this is the first time I'm sharing
control of that, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. Really fantastic to hear those introductions from three inspiring representatives of ours. And I've a couple of questions, I think, or I probably do about 10, but I'll try and restrict myself. First one is, I think for each of you, but particularly I'm just as interested in Charlie, actually, because I'm thinking about you with your disabilities, Charlie, as well. That we all know the problem with the Green Party, we're too homogenous. I just leave it at that. We know what we mean, okay? But what I'd like to ask each of you is, when you first joined, what apart from your own beliefs, so you made a choice, a decision, informed by different things. Yes, the Green Party is as one of my sons, sort of, who's not a member, said, it's the least worst of all the parties, because none of us agree 100%, of course. But was there a particular person or particular people who may well have been, the white folk in the party, who like took you under their wing a bit, who nurtured you, who mentored you, who then helped you to grow your confidence? And I'll tell you the reason, one of the reasons I'm asking that, is that the only Green Party conference I went to was the Harrogate conference, which it was back 2016, a bit after I joined. And sadly, it was after that big world conference, so it wasn't very well attended. And out of about 250, 300 people that there, I think there were 2 non-white people there, and I thought, gosh, actually the Green Party can be difficult enough for some of us who white folks who think, gosh, it's a bit too this or a bit too that, or some of the people around that. What is it, for an able-bodied white male and so on? And I know, partly from my commitment, experience, activity and so on, how much more that can be multiplied when you are in a perceived minority. One of the reasons I say perceived minority is, and I always sort of say so-called BAME, because actually white folks were in the minority in the world, so we better get used to it, but to help you sustain that, because this is so important for us for the future, that actually there are people such as yourselves and Cleo, when she comes along, who are our new, well, you are our leaders already, in a sense, but who could be the leaders of the party, the next, one of our next MPs and so on. But we know, just from what you said, we're all ordinary folks with all our difficulties and all our hassle, and you get a text 5 minutes before you're due to have a meeting saying, oh, this has happened to your child or whatever it is. How do I deal? Yeah, so because I think one of the reasons that this has been held in Lambeth is because we're thinking, my gosh, we need more diversity in our group of people who are going to be elected on the council, because they're just going to, excuse the language, take the piss out of us, saying, oh, look, you're all, but you might have like 10 councillors now, but you're all white, and so on. And that would undermine our credibility with the large minority in Lambeth and so on. And of course, that actually it's a majority, because if you put in, other people come from other areas. So and I'll leave it at that, because I'm sure you've got a lot to say, so I'll shut up. I'm more interested in hearing from you guys.
No, thank you so much. And
Rashid, I went to Hull University, but that's from 1966 to 79, and we had an occupation every year there when I was there. It's fantastic being on the occupation committee and stuff like that. You've just frozen, Rashid. Okay, I'll shut up.
Hope we haven't lost him. Okay. Would someone else maybe want to answer while he's unfreezing? Oh wait, no, you're back.
Sorry about that. And thanks for that, Chris. And I also occupied a couple of buildings at my time at Hull. But what I was going to say was, it's just very briefly, if any of you guys had the privilege of going to the Global Green Conference in 2015, it's definitely my favorite conference ever. It's just, I don't know, just the fact that you get to meet Green Parties from Pakistan, Green Parties of Papua New Guinea, Rwanda. My mind was blown, basically. But to answer, I'll just try to answer as much of what you said, Chris. So I guess, when I joined the Green Party, and I was the only ethnic person, I don't want to say the only ethnic person as a member, but in all that used to come to the meetings, I used to be active, I never used to see any other kind of an ethnic person. And what was just really, really interesting is, I guess it's, as a party, especially we're Sheffield Green Party, Sheffield's a very diverse place, so it's incumbent upon us, if we really saying that we have got the solutions, we're the best to kind of represent Sheffield, we have to reflect the people that we are hoping to represent, basically, right? So it's, for example, I'll remember, we used to have a lot of meetings in pubs. So it was like, well, maybe we can make it a bit more accessible and not just meet in pubs, and we can kind of like go to different communities. So it's just, and don't get me wrong, there's lots of intelligent people in Sheffield Group, but it was, I guess it's that they may have not necessarily thought of why that may make a difference or not, kind of thing. So slight changes like that kind of really help. But also another like phrase I used to hear quite a lot, which used to be a bit of a bugbear of mine, was hard to reach communities. And there really never is any hard to reach communities, kind of thing. It's just that whether we actively decide to engage with communities or not, kind of thing. So it was just, again, just trying to change people's minds, because I guess on what I can kind of understand, because it's people naturally just stick to what they know. And it's like, even if we were to look at where the Greens had seats in Sheffield, it was in the nice leafy suburbs, predominantly kind of where white people would live, kind of thing. And so naturally they would kind of like be in that circle and speak to audience. But like, look at us now, like we got literally from like council estate and wards to like, so things have really dramatically kind of changed quite a lot, to be honest. But it kind of like does take people to having to just ask questions, but also just realizing that, yes, we can do things better, and we have to be better. It's like it's not a case we just kind of have to just wait around, kind of thing. And just very briefly, in terms of to ask you questions, there's somebody that kind of took me under their wing, kind of thing. I remember before I became a member, I had a lot of questions, right? So naturally, I was like, who can I speak with just to ask questions? So I went on Facebook and I messaged the leader of the party, Natalie Bennett, at the time, and her public profile. So I sent a couple of DMs, and I just was a bit, I'll be honest, I was a bit like blown away that the party leader would actually respond to some random person in Sheffield about party policy, kind of thing. And then we kind of had this back and forth for a while, kind of thing. And it was just really kind of, she was a very approachable person. I thought that was a really nice touch about Natalie. Not to say no one else's, but it was just, that was before I kind of became a member. And then that, she was just one person I kind of remember that and had. But in terms of Sheffield, it wasn't anybody specific, but of course I got to know lots of people just by really just throwing myself in the deep end.
Thank you. I'll answer that, Chris. I've got a bit of a confession actually to make to all of you. This might shock you. I only joined the Green Party 2019, so I'm quite new to the Green Party. Before that, I was for many years a member of the Conservative Party. I was a Tory. I changed, obviously, and one of the reasons, the reason is the climate emergency. Brexit was the final nail in the coffin for me. They're a dead parrot, the Tories. They are no more. And the one person that convinced me about it strategically was Molly Scott Cato. And the economies of extraction and consumption, it's dead. We cannot do it. It's dead. The circular economy is where it's all at. And Molly Scott Cato, even though I don't know her personally, I've had Zooms with her, I've emailed and had the odd correspondence. She sort of opened my eyes to the fact there is another way to reorder our economy and society. So she was the one person that really finally said, right, green is the way to go. But because of lockdown, because of COVID, because I'm so new to the party, I haven't had the chance to really get to make meaningful connections as yet, despite all the wonderful people here in Glastonbury and Somerset who I have got to know. They're all brilliant. So I hope that answered the question. But yeah, so it's listening to Magid and brilliant stories about the past. I wish I had got to know you guys a lot long ago, you know, but I am where I am now. But just to let you know, a lot of people are changing and are looking at the Greens because we're the only ones that make sense these days.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Chris, for your question. So when I first joined, was there a particular person? Yes, it was always Max McLaughlin. He's always there. I think the Irish and the Pakistanis have something in common. We're always there with our big families, always supporting each other. And if we don't have that, then there's always food to come to. So between us, yeah, there was always Max. I guess that was the one person, but the other person is Peggy Wiseman, who was, you know, who is at the moment supporting us on our campaigns. The first time I met Peggy, I mean, I've never delivered a leaflet through the door, right? So Peggy's like, this is how you deliver a leaflet through the door. And I said, okay. It was a cold day. I wore the most inappropriate shoes. And she said, it will only be an hour. And to be honest, it was 59 minutes. And Peggy said, so these letterboxes, Shahin, I'll let you know, these are the ones where you get your hand stuck in. This is the one where you can get your finger ripped off. And this is the one where your dog can chew the living daylights out of your other fingers. It was just such an amazing moment. 1 hour in which Peggy taught me everything that I needed to know about delivering leaflets. I mean, what she didn't teach me is that do not deliver leaflets in the rain, because there are no leaflets left. And then we had Max, who always there, and Andy, who were, you know, who are in my, there's 3 of us in our constituency, Max, Andy, myself. One of the brilliant things is, I don't think ever, they are like family. You know, we went beyond where we are right now in that sense. But the Solihull Green Party, if ever you guys have the privilege to visit us, we're like one big family. You know, we're always supporting each other. When there is something that is happening or some news has happened, we're there for each other. So I think that's what makes us work. In terms of your other questions, I think, yes, I mean, I do see that the party is sometimes, I wouldn't say one color. I said we're all different shades of brown, right? We're warmer brown and a lighter brown and a tan. But, you know, I do think that diversity, representation and inclusion is really, really important, because in Lambeth, if you're talking about the statistics that you gave at the beginning, you know, how do young marginalized people see themselves changing the shape of just the area that they're in, if they're not in a space where they can do that? And it's really, really important for people to be represented in this space, like you have, Magid. You know, if he can, like he did for me, he did come out and he could visit yours. I don't know, Magid, I'm speaking on your behalf there, but definitely I can pay for the train fare. But the point is, I think representation is really, really important, because often you find that the people representing us are always speaking on our behalf, always representing us, always saying things about us, saying things to, saying things for. But hello, we're here, we can speak on behalf of ourselves. And I think that's where you will get confident young politicians, when you allow them to own this space and enter in this environment that is so tricky. I have to say, when I first joined the party, when I first joined and I was elected, I would say I came into the room as I was, and 5 councillors of the opposition turned their back towards me and wouldn't shake my hand, because I was very new. I'm very obviously overtly different in a council that is 51 councillors, and most of them, in fact, I think I was the only brown councillor then, were white. It is disheartening, but you do see beautiful people. Everybody's got a kind of a beautiful characteristic. And I have to say, 3 years down the line, one of the opposition said to me, Shahin, and this will probably sound really cringy, but can you be the green in our blue?
That's really funny. Sorry, can I just jump in very briefly? I'd love to know how you answered that question, Shahin. How did you answer it before?
The person that asked the question was, he's a non-politician, by the way, an MP. And I turned around to him and I said, well, I think there'll be more green here than there will ever be blue.
Definitely. Do you know, just on representation very briefly, is because, you know, on a personal level, it's, for example, so when I got elected as a Green Councillor, I was the only Black person on Sheffield City Council. And for me, I took it on like of course, like it's interesting because many people were celebrating that, but from my point of view, I didn't think it was anything much to celebrate, because with Sheffield being a major city and so diverse, we shouldn't have, like, it took us all, we should have done better basically. So I then kind of took it upon myself to kind of like, okay, the next person in my ward, I'm going to try and basically support, try and encourage other people, because at times it's like people need to see it to be it. Like, at times people would need to see like Charlie as a councillor to then literally to be like, well, okay, maybe I can do it, kind of. And I know it sounds a bit corny, but it's just genuinely, it's true, because sometimes we may think like an environment is not built for us, or we may not kind of be able to do it until we kind of see somebody, and then naturally that kind of just inspires us and kind of really like, well, no, it is kind of possible. So basically when I got elected, I was like, okay, what can I do, kind of thing. And I've just kind of, one of the sayings I like to say is that God gave us two hands, one to climb up with and another one to lift people up as we're climbing. So I kind of supported one of my friends at the time, a lady called Kultum, who wasn't a councillor, but she lived in the ward. And I was like, okay, next year you're going to be a councillor, kind of. And then you supported her, kind of thing. Then she became a councillor. And then now, like, we've got like Maroof, we've got quite a few, kind of thing, but it just takes the effort, kind of thing. But just on, briefly, just on representation itself, it's from I guess from a green perspective, of course, like our like national image also is, because the reality is it's us councillors, we may be known in our wards and in our kind of cities or whatever, but people look to kind of like our national leaders and stuff like that. So I think we've still got like a long way to go in terms of the National Green Party kind of being a bit more reflective and being a bit more diverse, and because naturally people do look to the national leaders. So hopefully the next election or the one after that will kind of have Shahin stepping up and basically, no pressure, Shahin. But basically it's, yeah, I'll stop there, kind of thing. That was a mission, but yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
It's a really hard one, actually, Magid. Yeah, I would like to, Chris, one of the things that happened was recent elections from a kind of Green Party women. What happened was in and around that I didn't, when they did their elections, I didn't see any representation, and I complained. And I said, look, you've sent out a poster and I feel as though I'm not represented in that poster. And then they said, do you want to be part of the Green Party women? Again, it was an election process. I mean, I did get elected, but again, it shouldn't be. So what ends up happening, and I don't know how you feel about this, Magid, but I end up being on everything BAME, which is like, oh, she's a Black and minority ethnic representative on domestic abuse, so let's put her on the strategy group. Oh, she'll understand equality and diversity because she's brown, because, you know, she has this equality and diversity lens. No, I don't. Or let's put her on X, Y, and Z because she understands inclusion. But, you know, these words, they're not for the other, they're for us, they're for all of us, to be able to understand and to be able to not use this imperialistic language by then furthering and othering us into another space. We need to be part of the discussion, we need to be part of the discourse, we need to be part of the social change and the behavior change that we see in our communities and the change that we want to see within Britain, right? And sometimes I wish, Chris, if I'm being, you know, and I'm being honest, I wish that we could see that representation at national level. And I hope that that happens at some point.
Can I just very briefly, just in terms of representation itself, in my opinion, is not going to just solve a lot of things, especially, I guess, when you look at it from like a national perspective, because just like, she'll say, just having Black and brown faces in high places isn't, if they've got shit politics. For example, the Tories can easily be like, representation, we've got Sajid Javid, we've got our Home Secretary Priti Patel, Chancellor of the Exchequer. They all look like the diverse people. Look, we're diverse, but we understand they're literally, the policies and stuff that they espouse do not in any shape or form kind of benefit for the majority of Black and brown people in this country, kind of thing. So just like, it's sometimes it can be used as a way to kind of be like, look, we haven't got, like, we've solved diversity issue, kind of thing. But of course, we want people who are from those communities, people who kind of just have you naturally kind of hope that they have got a deep understanding and they are going to represent those kind of views, and that just, they all haven't got shit politics basically. But yeah, I'll say that.
I think Chris just wanted to
Oh.
come back and say something.
Yeah, no, and sorry, just on that, I don't know if people have read the thing, it's on, The Guardian today on the website about the politicians being interviewed about their Muslimness and so on. And actually it's the Tory Muslim MP who says, I think my party would be able to cope. I haven't experienced this, or only experienced it a couple of times. I think they would respond and so on, but I don't want to be a Tory. I absolutely stand 100% against Islamophobia, but just as you said, Magid, I'm not a Tory, and she's, I won't use a swear word. Sorry, I'll let you come back because I'll shut up after this. And but you see, I think I'm going to cut to the chase in a way. You see, because I think that actually, you see, as well as just as you have both articulated the need to put you forward and to represent your constituency, whatever that is, and that shifts and changes and so on, that it's actually the onus is on us white folks in the party, because we're a 90 whatever % white party, okay, that actually it's what all my experiences, my working life, which has been in social care, child and adolescent mental health and education with schools and so on, and in my political life, is that many white folks are actually scared to have a dialogue, to talk with so-called BAME people. And it's not because they are racist, and certainly I wouldn't expect, a Green Party member to be racist in hard terms and so on. It's because they're scared of making a mistake. And so they silence themselves because they think, gosh, if I say that to Shahin, she might be take it the wrong way or be insulted. If I say that to Magid, he might be a bit, take it the wrong way and he might bite back and so on. And so I've got to show I'm squeaky clean. And the way I'll do that is by not saying anything, because then I'll make no mistakes, But we've actually, and the way that we learn, and we all learn, is through dialogue. That is to me a core principle of Green Party politics. It's about dialogue and learning from others and so on. And that to me is what's been so inspiring about Pete and some of the work that he and colleagues have been doing and so on to diversify. But we need to say that because it's bloody uncomfortable. It can be for anyone to be Green Party members. And I loved what you said about the fact about that there is diversity. I'll just leave it at that. Sorry, it's a short comment, Florence, but I'll leave. I was fortunate enough in one of my work roles to work with the sister of the first Muslim female peer in the House of Lords. And one of the things she said, I mean, it's something that I'm sort of aware of anyway, but we do training together. And she said, look, I'm one of 5 siblings. And she said, look, one of my siblings is very devout and doesn't drink alcohol and so on. Another of my siblings, might have a glass of wine here or might want to do this. They haven't got a very close relationship to Islam and so on. And it's only when you hear those stories that then your stereotypes, fall away and you think, oh yeah, individuals, listening to individual stories then humanizes things and so on. Yeah, so I think the onus is on us because there are, as you said, Magid, there aren't any hard to reach areas. The only reasons there are hard to reach areas is because of some Green Party members who are scared to go on to council estates, and then when if they actually do, they realise actually there's quite a lot of owner occupiers there anyway, and young people who can't afford houses anywhere else, and so on and so forth. Similarly with other so-called hard to reach communities, Okay.
Thanks for that, Chris. I think we'll move on to, we have another question in the chat. So Magid, I know you aren't currently elected as a councillor, but this would be a question for when you were, but it's a question for everyone. So about, roughly how many hours a week would you spend on your councillor responsibilities? How much does it take up on top of working, childcare, family, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Florence. Yeah, that's fine. Now, I think a lot of it depends on what sort of area you represent. I represent a very large rural patch. I've got 12 parish councils, whose meetings I have to go to, plus the usual formal council meetings. So we were talking about this earlier. In terms of things I have to go to, you know, otherwise, or I need to give my apologies to things that I'll get in trouble, and the voters will ask questions if I don't do. We're probably talking on average about 6 hours a week, but on top of that, there's probably about 7 to 12 hours of casework. So you're looking round about 20 hours a week, a lot of which, thankfully, I can do from home, apart from the formal meetings. That's on average. And I say that to people so they get a rough, what I would never say to potential candidates is, you work as hard as you want. You know, you can work, and I would never say, like some councillors do, I work 20 hours a day. You know, I don't go on holiday. I work all day Sunday. You know, I go to bed at 3 o'clock. Because that puts people off. It disadvantages those with families and caring responsibilities, disabled folk like myself as well. So hopefully that answers the question. I will usually say round about a large, very large rural area that requires lots of travelling, round about 20 hours a week at the moment to do a hoping I'm doing a half decent job. But I hate the one-upmanship. They say, oh, I work 50 hours a week, 50 luxury. It gets like the Four Yorkshiremen sketch, and it's a nightmare. There's nothing worse than councillors trying to busy brag about how incredibly hard they're working, because it puts people off standing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's something, just before the both of you answer this question, is we've had, so we had Scott Ainsley was elected, well, Becca Thackeray actually, at first was elected as a lone councillor, then Scott Ainsley was elected as a lone councillor, and then now we have 5. And I think something that we've seen is our councillors work so hard, like they're always working so hard. And I think that's obviously amazing, but also we really want people to see that you don't have, you know, you don't have to be working every hour of the day, because if we want to encourage, you know, younger people with families to be standing, like we need to be able to support them so that they don't need to be working every single hour of the day. But yeah, it'd be good to hear from Magid and Shahin.
Do you know, and it's really hard because it depends. So for example, if you've got a ward of 3 people and all of them are 3 Green Councillors, it's a lot easier because you can share the workload kind of thing, whether that you'd be like split up the patch or split up the casework or themes, whatever. So it does definitely become easier when there's a ward is split, there's all Green Councillors. Even if there's 2 of you, it's a lot easier. But from my point of view is, so I was the only councillor in my ward at the time, right? And even before I stood, I always knew I was only going to do 1 term. And I know that might be a bit strange because I got actually a 3-year term. I always knew I'm going to do 3-year term. I'm not going to rerun. Because this is before I knew about potentially being Lord Mayor, whatever, because I was like, I'm going to just give it my all. Because at the time, like, I'll be honest, I didn't have any children. Like, the work that I was doing was freelance. But at the same time, I could do a lot more kind of councillor work. So because I knew the fact that me personally, I'd just go all out kind of thing. So I literally was one of those councillors who was working 50+ hours a week being a councillor. Because as well, one of the things is that you realise that reality is, especially just to give you my ward, Broomhill and Sharvale, 3 major demographics. So you've got students, you've got really socially deprived parts, and then you've got affluent parts. So it's really, it's a real mix. But most of the people never engage with their councillors. And when you're an active councillor, the more doors you knock, the more casework you get, the more work you get, the more people know about you. So you just work on top of work. So the more work you do, the more work you create, kind of thing, right? And I knew I could not carry, because at some point I knew I wanted I'll be honest, I knew I wanted to get a job and like do other parts of life. So I knew I couldn't maintain it. So that's why I made the decision. I'm just going to go all out for 3 years, kind of thing, do the best I can. And of course, with that meant that we've got Kaltuma elected next, and we got Angela elected, and then all the ward was green basically. And then it's a lot easier to manage. And now it's still all 3 Green Councillors, and it's a lot easier. But if you're a lone councillor in one ward, it can be difficult because you are that go-to person, because it's not like you can share the workload with the Labour councillors kind of thing. And sometimes you can, but most times they don't even want to know you kind of thing. So it's just, like I said, each councillor is kind of different. Like, for example, Douglas in the City ward, not much, like there wasn't much work that would come in because it's such a transient ward, city centre ward. So it just varies in what the demographic of your ward is, and the more like how active you're. So for me, it was just a full on like chaotic 3 years, which was great, but I knew I could not sustain that basically. So I knew that before, like, so yeah, that was just my experience. But that's not to put. That's
okay,
not to
you're not selling it.
Yeah, no. But what you need to say is that was an active choice. Like Charlie said, it can be as much as you want it to, because you do actually get, for example, you get some retired folk who treat it like a full-time job. But the thing is, it's like you have to find what your working style is. Yes, look, Shahin does it. She's a mother. She's got a full-time job. She's holding, and she's still an amazing counsellor. You can make work, but it's, I'll be honest with you, you have to create boundaries. Maybe not some, I didn't get to that, but it's, you can be like, okay, these are the working hours I'm going to do. This is what I'm focused. So you can manage it, but it's just that before you become a counsellor, you go speak with counsellors, that's it. And then you try and create what your working style is. Because even out of all the 13 counsellors in Sheffield, people do differently depending on the circumstances, but it all works out. And it's like, it's, you can have a part-time job and work. You can like, I mean, some people have even got full-time jobs and they're counsellors as well. So it just, you need to just look at lots of different factors, but it is 100% doable, and it's not something you have to kill yourself over basically. But it's just that my personality type is a bit chaotic and full on, so that's what I did. But it's just, yeah, it doesn't have to be like that.
Okay, well, I'd love to hear from Shahin now.
Well, I do a whole 50 hours. No, I don't, Charlie. No, no. No, I mean, I think it is as much as you want to do and as less as you want to do. And I know we don't like the answer. So, I mean, coming up to elections, the 6 weeks coming up to elections, and now we're doing campaigning in our wards, for example. So I'll be helping Shirley West, which means that we have to be more full on. We know, for example, Steve, who's our party leader, who will say, Shahin, you're going to have to give extra couple of 13, 14 hours. We have regular every week meetings. Campaigning meetings, who's going to go into what ward. I'm in Shirley South, so the fact that I'm Muslim, my ward is predominantly white. So I just wanted to clarify that as well, because actually you don't necessarily sit in a ward that looks like me. I'm in a ward which is majority white. And again, that's another thing you have to understand, that, you know, when you get elected, sometimes you think that the ward that you're going to be elected in is very much like you. And then you realize, hang on a minute, this is slightly different. And I think part of me was, oh my God, are they going to even select me? Or are they going to, I got selected, but are they going to even elect me? You know, that was the nervousness because of where I was. But, you know, again, my ward, sometimes I do 2 hours work a week. Sometimes I could do 15 hours of work a week, depending on what it is. Right now, it's really busy because everything that's happened with COVID, the fact that doctor surgeries are not answering the phones, the fact that, you know, Solihull as a borough, we had all the PCR stuff, we have the airport here. So there's lots of little things that have made it slightly more busier. But yeah, it can, depending on which ward you are. I'm with 3 councillors, 2 other councillors in my ward, Max, Andy and I, we do share out the load. Andy's brilliant. He is the person that you speak about, Magid, which is, he is the retired person that really loves walking up and down the ward. So he will know exactly which lamppost on which street doesn't have a light. And I didn't even realize there was a lamppost there, let alone the fact that there's a light missing. So he's that person. Max is the more kind of the climate change person, kind of looking into the real green issues, housing, where housing is going to be allocated. And I'm the kind of person, so I'm the one that deals with stronger communities, the policing issues. I deal with all the kind of special education needs, all the stuff to do with skills, admissions, and all the other kind of stuff. So between the 3 of us, we have a really amazing portfolio between the 3 of us, and we all deal with different things. But again, for example, today, Andy has come up to me and said, look, Shahin, there's this thing happening. Can you take care of it? So there are other people to help you. And if you are a lone councillor, you know, there are other councillors that you can rely on to be able to support you. But, you know, again, it's as much as you can, and you know, as little as you do. And sometimes the other thing I was going to say was that we wanted to, just for this election, have a lady represent, you know, to hold another seat within Solihull. Unfortunately, she's got 3 children with SEND, and we were, as a party, were thinking, how can we support her so we could get her taxi needs, get her babysitting done, get her. But she decided that this year she will shadow one of us, so she'll shadow me to see how much I do, and then next year she'll think about, you know, being part of it, part of the Green Party. So yeah, there's lots of different things we can put, interventions into place that can be put into place in order to support the up and coming Green councillors, or the up and coming individuals who want to do more in this area. Oh, by the way, I was going to answer Chris. I was going to say to Chris, if we're not politicians, we're definitely comedians between us, I think. That's our next role, I believe. So I think the Green Party should have its own comedy club.
Yeah, brilliant. Can I just jump in? Can I cut to the chase of the original question? Don't worry about hours. If you're thinking in Lambeth of standing as a Green, regardless, do it. Even if you think you can only do 10 minutes a week, just stand, sign the papers, get them signed and stand. The most important thing you do really is in the full council chamber when you get to vote on major pieces of legislation, and we need to make sure there are enough Greens to make sure we're voting for the, you know, climate emergency related ones. So please, all of you, anybody listening to this call, even if you think you haven't got any else, just stand. And as Magid and Shahin have said, we'll sort the hours out once you've started, but we've got to stand. You've got to stand regardless.
Can I just very quickly, Florence, just very short 3 points. Even though I was working a lot of hours, I think it's very, very important for me to say that I absolutely loved it. Like, nobody, like, I genuinely, and I kid you not, and I think the reason, because it didn't feel like a job, is that because it's so varied, the work that you're doing, and you see the impact that you're doing, it is a lot of fun. And like you said, Andy, he'd walk up and down, and like, you're meeting new people all the time. So for me, it never really, it didn't feel like a job. That's why for me, I wasn't watching the hours or anything, that sort of stuff. But also, even if you are a lone councillor, each ward, you've got Green members on your ward. So what you do is you rely on those Green Party members to kind of help you. So you naturally, even if you are by yourself as a Green councillor, you build a support network of people who live in the ward, who understand the ward, and they end up being like the ward committee or the ward group kind of thing. So even though you're a lone councillor, you can split the workload kind of thing. Even there might not be any Green councillors, but there'll be Green members who are doing lots of work. But the other thing I also wanted to say is, as much as you're also doing the actual, what you're meant to be doing as a councillor, like voting, committee, all that, you are also expected to help out the party. So sometimes as councillors, you can hold actual positions within within your kind of group kind of thing. So you kind of get involved with the kind of group, but it's like I said, everything's kind of shared. And I think just the sentiment, like Shahin and Charlie also kind of touch upon, is that you will get the support you need. So even if you're thinking to yourself, I'd love to do it, it may not be possible, it is more than possible, and you will get the support that you need. But what we do want is, honestly, people to actually put themselves forward, because honestly, it is, in my opinion, one of the most rewarding things you can do in life. And it's not even like I said, compared to an MP, MEP, whatever, you really get to directly see the impact that you're having on people's lives. And I couldn't recommend it enough.
Florence, can I just give you a story? I remember after my election, during my election, I had to take some of the constituents. So we were giving a constituent service where we would take some of the elderly constituents who couldn't drive to the election, to the voting area. So one of the constituents I had who had dementia. So I picked her up and I said, "Oh, you're coming with me?" And she said, "Oh, okay." She said, "Oh, are you the new councillor?" And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not the councillor yet." Anyway, I picked her up and she said, "Oh, I've got dementia." And I said, "Okay." So we had to put everything in the car for her, got her into the car, took her to the voting booth. She voted. She asked me, so what colour are you? And I was like, oh, I said, I can't say. And she's like, oh, I think I know because I can see your badge. And I said, okay. So she voted, came back out, I dropped her off home. And then she called me and she said, I need to go and vote because she'd forgotten that she'd voted. And the beautiful thing was, her and I have created this, we have this relationship where I go and visit her nearly every second week. And she's like, you're the one that took me for voting twice. And I said, no, I didn't. What happened was, but you know, these beautiful stories that you can't, you know, you're part of people's lives. You know, you're part of people's lives who have struggled with special education needs for their children, you know, who've had to, and you're the only one in the ward that is helping them, you know. Moms, you know, there's been, mom has left her job to support the child. They've got into debt as a result of, you know, care not being provided. You know, they've gotten off rolling, so the child is not attending school anymore. And then suddenly you realize that the child is 21. And actually, mom wants to then see what services are in place. You know, that's where you can help, because it's these very amazing individual relationships that, you know, that become part of you as a human being. And at the end of it, more than anything, there is a coolness, and I don't know how it works here, but there's a coolness in our hearts when we feel as though we've achieved and supported someone, or, you know, really supported an issue that has meant a lot, not just for one individual, but for an entire community. So it really does make a big difference.
Thank you for that. We do have one of the questions that we have got is quite Lambeth specific. So I'm actually going to ask Pete Elliott, who's one of our councillors in Gypsy Hill, who's on this call, if he can come in and answer this, because I think he's better placed to answer it. So the question is, what strategic priorities does the party have to increase numbers of councillors in Lambeth? So over to you, Pete.
Thank you, Florence, and thank you for organising this. It's awesome, and it's been such an engaging and entertaining talk by everyone. So thank you for coming along to our guests. And I just want to pick up on something from just before what Shahin was saying, was, you know, you get touched as a councillor by, you know, just moments that really hit home. And one tonight happened just before we came here. And I was with Shamin, and one of the mothers who I'd helped just a couple of months ago, she came up to a surgery that we were having just in the housing office, and with her 3 kids. And she was so grateful for the support that she'd been given. She didn't come up to me with any problems or anything, just came to say thank you, you know, and it just meant so much that, you know, and I was touched by it. I don't know what Shamin thought, but I was, you know, I was blown away by it, to be honest. But so in terms of strategic goals for Lambeth and how we're going to get more councillors, and thank you for being here, Vincent, as well. It's great to see you. I've known you now for about 7 years, since Scott first introduced me to you, saying help in Stockwell Gardens West. And so we've got 3 wards where we have councillors already. So those 3 wards are ones that we are really pushing hard to make sure that A, we secure the number of councillors we've got, and B, that we try and increase the numbers that we've got. So we've got 5 councillors at the moment. Those 3 wards, if we're successful, we will then go up to 8 councillors. We've also got a couple of wards that we are sort of, they're target wards, but they're sort of second level. And then I think that, you know, in Lambeth, with the state that things are with the Labour Party in Lambeth at the moment, you know, anywhere is almost up for grabs. And I think that in terms of what we need, and has been alluded to by some of the councillors on this call already, is we need good people to put their names forward, to make a bit of noise in their local areas, and just look, you know, campaign locally and just be a voice for us in other areas, and let's see what happens. You know, I can go into a little bit more detail, but I won't do on this call, because you know, this is a hopefully we're going to record this and we're going to share it with people who want to be are interested in becoming part of it, so we can use this going forward. But broadly speaking, you know, that's how we're going to win. It's about targeting the wards we can win, increasing those, and then building up in other areas as well. And that's kind of how the Green Party works, and it's worked in Solihull so well, as Shahin will vouch for. And we had in Gypsy Hill, we had James Byrne helping us 3 years ago, which really helped us sort of go from 1 councillor to 5. So, you know, it works. We've got a strategy and it does work. So yeah, please get involved and put your names down.
Thank you, Pete. I've just realised that I did say that we would have a break at 8 and it's actually 20 past. So hopefully everyone's fine with us just continuing. I think hopefully Cleo will be with us soon and then she can join in with the discussion that we're having. So the next question I've got is, what green issues are most important to local politics and your work as a councillor? And do you have any unusual examples of green issues being raised? So I don't know who wants to go first. Charlie?
Yeah, okay, I'll jump in. Where I am in central Somerset, it's planning on the whole, and retrofit as well, but particularly new housing developments. I'm doing my damnedest to make sure we try and get to passive house, or as close as possible to passive house when it comes to building standards. We've got policies now because of Greens on solar panels, on car charging points, on heat pumps, and we're working really hard when it comes to active travel options as well in new housing development. So yeah, it's for me, my mostly rural, semi-rural ward, it's planning that I'm spending a lot of time on, that the most people want to talk about, really.
Hi, sorry, it was my question. I just wanted to follow up on what you said. When with green issues, obviously affordable housing is very important, but also kind of traditional, like the environment is very important too. And sometimes those two can come at odds with each other to some extent. How would you reconcile that? And do we have like a national strategy for that, or is it different for, say, Somerset as it would be to Lambeth?
I mean, to be put from my perspective again, I talk a lot about the need for smaller dwellings, as long as they're energy efficient and they're well insulated, and you know, we can have both, Tom. I think basically, if we're clever with our planning policies, and it is actually what people want in large rural areas. A lot of people want to downsize, as well as first-time buyers, people coming onto the housing ladder. So there is a need across all demographics and all ages for energy efficient, environmentally friendly, smaller dwellings. So I think in a way we could, if we're clever, have our cake and eat it. But I'll let Shahin and Magid perhaps comment now as well.
I was going to say, I know Cleo's joined us. Be very, very brief. I was going to say, in terms of I think politics and green related things, well, everything is somehow related to green related issues. So of course, naturally, Sheffield, there was lots of air pollution. Like we actually even had to close a school down, a secondary school in Sheffield, because the air pollution was that terrible. And housing, like especially like council housing has always been an issue. Like council said they're no longer going to do minor repairs. That was a big thing. Food banks, literal poverty on the rise was a really big thing as well. And roads, you're gonna always get your reoccurring things, planning, licensing, all that sort of stuff. But it's in my opinion, people, ordinary citizens, don't look at and be like, this is a green issue, this is a kind of like a Labour issue. It's just generally, people are all have got something that they care about that or just needs changing or that they're kind of struggling with, and they're just hoping that councillors, their elected councillors, can actually do something about it and change it, kind of thing. But yeah, I'll just stop there.
Thanks, Magid. I mean, I think within Solihull, some of the issues that we're seeing is ones that have already been mentioned. Again, planning around new neighbourhoods. You know, what's happening with those. You know, the council at the moment, you know, we're planting for the future. We've done 250,000 trees. I mean, our Solihull Metropolitan Borough Council, the logo is called Urbs Ruhr, which means it's an urban rural area. So the planting of 250,000 trees. Again, you know, trying to create this kind of innovative low carbon heat and power single energy network that exists in and around Solihull town. We do a lot of stuff with wildlife ways. the one thing that I was involved was the Solihull walking and cycling strategy, making sure that young people and others and elderly have active travel in the borough, because I mean there is a big distance between one part of the area to another, and ensuring that actually the walking infrastructure is fit for purpose, and to try and improve accessibility, and making sure that actually we cater for future cycling and walking, and not just now as well. They have we were looking at an electric vehicle strategy as well, and making sure that there is this connective autonomous vehicles trial that we're working on as well. I mean, there's lots of things. There's a lot of things that we're doing in Solihull. We have a green prospectus. But one thing I did want to say about affordable housing, I guess for the Green Party itself, you know, it is about securing affordable housing for everyone in Solihull. And then that means for us, we would like the abolishment of the cruel and unfair bedroom tax, making sure that we build, you know, more social rented houses. That's exactly what we try and do in Solihull, and bring back empty homes back into use. Residents in Solihull always tend to own second homes in Devon or Cornwall. So kind of thinking about how we can look at that as, you know, second homeowners, and where they should have their fixed penalties in related to those kind of homes. Capping rent and introducing longer tenancies. I think that's the other thing that we're also trying to do. Interestingly, for us, you know, in Solihull, affordable housing is not how you see affordable housing. You can't afford a house in Solihull. And what does that mean? I think one of the things between affordable housing is who is it affordable for and who's it affordable to. It will not be affordable to the average young person in Solihull. And that's something that, you know, is within the current crisis within Solihull, we're building more elderly homes for over 55s across the borough than more affordable housing. Nothing on social rent that is, you know, that is being built. Or in fact, I tell a lie, I think we did 10. But then there's, you know, again, an average house price here is 350,000. How is that affordable for any young person that wants to live in the borough? HS2 is going to come through Solihull, so more and more people from London are buying homes in Solihull. So lots of these things that are happening that we as a borough are looking into. But again, we are pushing for making sure that affordable housing is affordable for everyone.
Just before we come over to Cleo, I just wanted to see if Pete wanted to come in, because housing is quite a big issue that we have in Lambeth, and he is one of our councillors here. I haven't actually checked with him if he wants to come in on this. Pete?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, very much mirroring what others have said here. We need more genuinely affordable council housing. We need to stop using the terms affordable housing, because it means different things to so many different people. We've been very much pushing on passive house and building to the best possible standards time and time again. We've been asking them to consider embodied carbon. I mean, I'm living on an estate that the council wants to demolish. So Shahin, I think, has fallen off the call, but you know, we're in a position here where we're pushing all of the right things. We've got a Labour Party here that just don't get it, and or they choose not to get it. I don't know. But the sustainability element of what's being offered in Lambeth is just appalling. And as a result, there's people like me and Shahin who are living on estates that the council wants to demolish. And you know, the amount of mental health issues that this is causing for residents on estates, and physical health issues because repairs aren't getting done. And it's just so depressing to see, you know, and you're constantly, the casework is going through the roof because of it. And you know, it's a real challenge, but we've got to stop demolishing buildings. We've got to stop building high buildings. One of the problems we've got in Lambeth is, especially as Vincent will know, is that in the sort of Vauxhall area, we've got loads of tall buildings, but they're not efficient. You know, that you can't build tall buildings. You can't get the density as well, because you have to have so many services going down through the buildings that you can't get the density. So you might think, oh, tall buildings is going to be great, but it's not. You've got to have sort of medium-sized buildings that do not have, you know, big surface areas and the services. So yeah, you know, we're working really hard on that, and social housing is a huge issue here, and you know, lots of things to discuss on that, but I'll not go on too much because I could take up the whole night.
Thank you, Pete, for coming on to that. Tom, I hope that has answered your question. Cleo, thank you for joining us. Do you want to tell us a bit about, I did do an introduction to you at the beginning before you were here, but do you want to tell us a bit about why you decided to become a councillor and what you enjoyed about it, the impact it's kind of had? That'd be great.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Well, it may be a slightly different journey to other people here. I'm presuming most people here, apart from the councillors, are people who are interested in standing in the upcoming election, which is great. For me, I was actually, what would you say, handpicked, if you like, or approached by our mayoral candidate at the time and a councillor who had supported a community project a few years prior. So they kind of knew me, and I met them at an address at Bristol University. Each year the mayor gives an annual address. I bumped into these two people and they said, have you considered standing? And I hadn't considered standing. And I was offered, would you like to stand? And I had a good think about it and think, well, yeah, it's interesting. It's something I've never considered. But I decided that I would continue with my arts practice, and I became the writer in residence at the Arnolfini in Bristol, which is quite a significant cultural institution. I thought I will continue to try and make a change, or see the changes I want to see in the world through art and activism. That was that. However, then getting close to the election at the time, which was 2016, there was someone who I knew quite well, actually, standing in a particular ward, but he landed his dream job in Edinburgh. So off he went, and they were a candidate down again. So they came back to me and said, Cleo, would you consider again standing? And it was a very different ward to the ward I was originally offered. The ward I was offered originally is a ward called Lawrence Hill, which is actually where my mother lives and is where I grew up. It's probably one of our most multicultural places in Bristol. It's also one that has a high level of deprivation, and is one where you would not be able to do the work on the suggested 12 hours a week. We're often told when we sign up to be a councillor that you can expect to do the minimum of 12 hours. And for a ward that size and that complexity of issues, you'd be sure enough to be doing several days a week on that. And at the time, I didn't think I could manage that, because also I kept my self-employed practice as an artist alongside this. Some people, there tends to be a stereotype, which we do see in Bristol, although that is shifting, that it tends to be retired people who become councillors because they've got experience, they've got time on their hands, and they may be able to afford to do so. So there is, to an extent, a financial implication that may be different in Lambeth. I don't know what the allowance is, but that is something to take into consideration, that most people still work part-time alongside being a councillor. So I ended up saying, okay, and it was for a ward that was quite near to where I live, but one that is far more affluent, and perhaps, every ward, every place has its own issues, doesn't it? No matter how privileged we may perceive it, whether it's rubbish collection, which is the obvious one, or residents parking, these kind of common things. So I did go for it with just a few months before the election, and luckily got elected. And I was quite excited because actually it was a time in Bristol City Council where we had the highest number of African heritage councillors elected. Albeit, Labour, obviously I'm Green, but I was still feeling so optimistic that we've got, Europe's first black mayor, or mayor of African heritage, leading the city, and a deputy mayor who's a Rastafarian woman. And I thought, I want a piece of this action, and felt really, positive. And at that time, didn't really fall into any of these kind of oppositional ideas, more kind of let's see what we can do to push things forward for the greater good of the city, rather than feeling it's Greens against Labour or this and that. We were quite a minority at that time. We were just 11 councillors, having gone down from 14, so it was a Labour majority. Things started off pretty well. So that's how I got into it. There were some difficult relationships along the road with the mayor at times. However, also I've been working with Scott in terms of working on things like reparations. And I think, there's so many different aspects to the role of councillor. I'm sure you've heard some of this already from some of the speakers. There's the sort of things you have to do, which is, of course, most of the work comes through email, or if you're brave enough to turn your councillor phone on, perhaps through phone. But actually, early days, I was receiving quite a lot of really weird messages through the phone. So I decided that that wasn't the right vehicle for me. But of course, people can phone the office. You'll have your political assistants and staff. They can also field phone calls, which is probably, I would suggest that would be better. I would advise it. So most of it is the casework through the emails. And a lot of the time as well, I would say that you can make a big difference being a councillor, because I've seen it many times where citizens just have had no response or very inadequate response from council officers and have had to wait quite a long time. You do notice that once you're a councillor and you put that email in, whether you copy in the citizen or not, you do manage to get a very quick turnaround. So that's one of the ways you can feel that you are making a difference and that your work is important. That's a real positive thing. However, sometimes it feels like people will come to you with all types of queries and problems and issues, some which are massively way out of your remit of being a councillor, and all you can really do is signpost or be a listening ear. Of course, you've got your work of committees, and hopefully you'll get a say about which committee you would like to be on, or committees. At one time I was on several: Avon Fire Authority, Destination Bristol, which was a cultural partnership, and others, People's Scrutiny Committee. And I would say that you have to factor in enough time to read all the papers. Sometimes for Avon Fire Authority, the papers were like that. I think they've hopefully moved digital now, but it's a lot of reading, and it's important to, if you can't read everything, at least pick a couple of areas where maybe you'll skim read a lot of it, but focus in so that you go to every meeting able to ask at least one or two questions and to be more present in that environment. And it does make a difference being able to raise certain concerns that perhaps others wouldn't. You will have your own interests, as well as kind of doing the things that will be expected of you, as I've already described. You'll also have your interest. And I would say, whilst my ward was a certain demographic with, more generic kind of issues, I was getting contacted by people citywide and even at times just outside of Bristol, because they felt that, many of them being of African heritage like myself, they felt more comfortable coming to me, although I wasn't their councillor. Of course, I had to listen to them and try and support where I could. I considered that part of my role, but there was a massive expectation then. It was almost like having two kind of groups of citizens that I was working for, if you like. I did get involved with campaigns such as Windrush, the Windrush scandal, and also, as I said earlier, reparations. And these are things that I chose to get involved with. Obviously, they were time consuming, but they were important to me. And I felt I could contribute and did contribute to make a difference. Of course, we passed, as Lambeth did, reparations motions, which is amazing, incredible. Of course, a lot of the work now is to follow up on that and make sure all the things that we said we would do, or the administration has signed up to do, gets done. I know Scott is involved with assisting with that. I would also say, as I said in the beginning, don't fall into the trap of being oppositional just for the sake of being oppositional. Of course, our role, often we are in opposition. When Bristol's a bit more balanced now, Labour don't have an overall majority because we secured the same number of councillors, 24, as they did at the last election, which is significant. But we have to always consider, as Magid said earlier, that we're working for the citizens, for the greater good of the city overall. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't scrutinise and call things out when we need to. But I do, sometimes the experience of full council does kind of remind you of being back in school, and it isn't the most healthiest environment. So we often say, don't we, as Greens, we do things differently. So I think sometimes we need to really try as hard as we can, how difficult it can be at some times, but try to keep that principle. Yeah, and I would just say that, you know, as I've explained the sort of things I got involved with and lent my voice to, and you may get a lot of media interest, so you obviously need to be confident if you can talking to the media. Your political assistants can help you with press releases. It's good to be active on social media. These are all obvious things, but I would also say that you know, being based in Lambeth, which is obviously a huge borough, that's the right word, I hope, because we would say ward in Bristol. It's obviously, you know, many different types of demographics, but for me, I can, you know, although some places are changing, Brixton and other places, we know that typically we have, you know, people from a global community, if you like. And if we don't have representative councillors, you know, this shouldn't matter, but it'd be great if we did have more councillors who represented the diversity of Lambeth. If we don't, I think it's also important that we champion the issues that we know are pertinent to that area, and always be that champion of those issues, and you know, be seen to be doing that work. Again, that might sound a bit of an obvious thing, but maybe it's not. That's about it, really. That's all I really wanted to say, and obviously happy to contribute to taking some questions if anybody has any.
Thank you for that. That was great. I just have one question, and I don't know if other people want to post more questions in the chat, but for also, if anyone didn't see in the chat, Charlie had to go at past, but it was really great to have him here. For all three of you, what would you say is your kind of best moment from being a councillor? And Shahin, obviously best moment so far because you are still a councillor, but for Magid and Cleo, you know, what was your best moment from the time that you were elected?
You know, and for me, it's because when we think of what councillors do, a lot of our time is reacting. It is a lot of problem solving. It is just constantly having to deal with whatever comes through your inbox or whatever kind of thing. For me, the best thing is the times where I've been proactive, basically. So it's like understand, and I guess it comes from a point of really knowing the world that you represent and understanding the issues. So for example, like a lot of the council houses, like and the housing associations, they said that we're no longer going to do minor repairs, for example. So then what we did was, what the initiative I kind of started was to start female DIY classes, and created a tool bank of equipment where basically residents can kind of borrow and they can use all the time. So again, it was just like those times where you really understand the issue and you're like, well, there I can bring those people together. Or just another one would be like university students that the law department needed to kind of, and for their credits had to do community work, and there was some elderly residents, so they would got them to help them to do their wills. So the students were benefiting and the residents were benefiting, and then you kind of really, for me, it was just that bringing people together to solve, or just to make things happen that may have never existed before, and then you kind of feed into the whole community cohesion and stuff like that. But it's just the proactive things as well as that I really kind of enjoyed, and of course the people are great as well.
Yeah, I didn't always enjoy, I shouldn't start off with what I didn't always enjoy, but yeah, I did, you know, there's a lot of tension and sometimes anxiety around, you know, creating your speech, your 2 or 3 minute speech for full council. And again, you can get kind of sucked into spending a lot of time thinking and doing that, but actually, is it that important? So, you know, that's something to factor in. I think one of the highlights for me, I mentioned the reparations motion, that would obviously be one of them, which is very significant. Reparations for Bristol's role in the transatlantic trafficking enslaved Africans and how the city's going to deal with that, which has led to a significant consultation with African heritage communities and a number of recommendations coming out of that, which is really positive. But also through lockdown, the first lockdown, you know, it was homeschooling, and I had a son who was school age, so I kind of understood how that was to be a parent with a child at school at that time, and it became clear very, very early on that there were many people who couldn't access the resources or the schoolwork because maybe they had one mobile phone for the whole family and didn't have data and all the rest of it. So I tried to liaise with council officers, and I did run it past the mayor as well to see whether we could do something where we encouraged, well, what did we have anyway in stock at the council that we could use? And there were some issues with procurement and this, that and the other or whatever else, because they usually use a firm to, refurbish old IT equipment. So, it was looking at how can we get people to donate this. So I tried to work with the council, but that took ages. So I did work with Bristol Waste, who is our kind of Bristol City Council's in-house waste company, but they also do things like PAT testing. So they got on board. I also worked with Avon Fire Authority, because I was a member at the time, to have places, i.e. the fire stations, where people could donate equipment, laptops, etc. And then I partnered with a local organisation, charity called DigiLocal, which specialises in getting young people online and things like coding. And they could make sure that the equipment was usable, put the programs on and all that. So we managed to get that up and running, and it took the council about a year to catch up and make that bigger. So I think that was a major thing that I was really proud of, that I saw the need and was able to act quickly and pull those partners together. Of course, a lot of these things wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't a councillor. If I was just Cleo Lake, the activists, or someone in the community, I don't think I would have managed to achieve that. So again, it's just one of those ways where having that title councillor, as much as I'm not really a titles type of person, I say as a former Lord Mayor, it does make a difference. And I'm sure Magid saw that as well. But whilst we were both Lord Mayors, maybe not when he was going to expensive dinners, lavish dinners in his shorts and baseball cap, which I think is great. But we see how differently we're treated. Whether councillor or Lord Mayor, you're treated completely differently than if you were just a citizen, which, we can make our own minds up about whether that's good or bad. But use it to help others, obviously.
Thanks. And from my side, I think one of the things that has really made a big difference is we stopped council from building on Greenbelt allocation 13, which was one of our major campaigns, and that that's when Sean Berry came down, and it was just an amazing thing. What we did was we went with all the kind of the individuals that were living around the roads, got everybody onto the allocation site, and then kind of had to fight for ensuring that housing was not built on this particular area of Greenbelt. I mean, that took about a year. I say in a couple of sentences, but it really did take a long time to get there. Needless to say, the council then found another piece of Greenbelt, and now we're fighting on that as well. But yeah, the fight must go on. I think everything that everybody said is exactly what we're doing. I mean, one of the other things is, I think I became an expert on special education needs, and for me, pushing that every education and children's skills meeting, now that we've got the post-16 education bill, how is that going to affect our communities? What does that mean for 37% of Black people who obtain a BTEC, they use that to get into university, and then suddenly we've got the government putting in the difference between what are T skills and A levels, and creating a further divide as a result of it. So pushing that at council at the moment, I think we started that about 3 weeks ago. So those are the kind of things that as a councillor I'm pushing, particularly when we're in a fairly affluent borough. Education is not a priority for us. When I say for us, for a particular part of the borough, which is the south, and for the north, it actually makes the big amount of difference. So, I mean, for me, I think, Florence, the other thing I wanted to say is that, there are so many lessons that I've learned, lessons I've learned to be open, to be honest, to be willing to learn, to being generous and to being kind with our words. And, the most important thing is actually you end up just listening. Yeah. But I would say be present when people are talking to you. Do not try and not be on your phone. Be present. when you're in that moment and you're talking to people who really are pouring their hearts out, who for sometimes have not spoken to anybody else other than you. And for me, one of the biggest things I learned in year 2 was believing in myself. You know, we all have insecurities, and you know, we're born sometimes, I say Muslim women are born with an extra gene of insecurity. You know, we've got to own our own narratives. You know, we have to be strong, we have to be courageous, and we have to stay true to ourselves and stay true to our principles as well, because sometimes in this political space, you find that you don't have the friends, or who you thought were your friends are no longer your friends. But also getting to know your constituency, because for those who would like to be councillors, it's really important to know your constituency. And just like on a chessboard, you know, learn who your opponents are and learn who your friends are. And sometimes you find your friends in the most unexpected of places, said the bishop to the queen, I say. But yeah, absolutely. And the irony of it is we're in one of the most affluent boroughs, but one of the highs that has been is that actually the first time in Solihull we've had a food bank. And that has shown a lot. Definitely during COVID in the last 2 years, you're now seeing the extra usage of middle class families using the food bank, which has created a shock kind of wave within the council. You asked about an irony, probably, I don't know if you asked this question, but the one of the funniest things that happened to me was in lockdown, when somebody asked me to get a copy of the Telegraph and the Daily Mail and the Sun, and a can of 4 cans of Carlsberg beer, and I was trying to explain to him, no, I can't do that. And he says, but I'm disabled. And I was like, yeah, but do you see this? There's going to be a Muslim cashier at Tesco who's going to judge me. But anyway, you know, again, it's those kind of things that you learn. I met a 100-year-old man, and he said I reminded him of a land girl, because, you know, we had a great chat over the gate when I was delivering food to him. But, you know, the best thing I did, I think, was when the first time I spoke in a debate on social housing. For me, that was a moment. And the councillor, like, what is social housing? That kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, for all of us, I think we all have something to give, and we all are human beings that all do give. And, you know, again, being honest and being open and being generous and being kind with your words and being present really makes somebody's day. And I think that's what it is to be a councillor. You end up being a diplomat, you end up being you end up being a diplomat in spaces that you never expected. You end up being a listener in places that you never expected those individuals are going to talk to you. I remember when we had the Black Lives Matter march in Solihull, the first time a protest ever happened in Solihull, and in a council meeting, somebody said to me, Shahin, do you think that you can control these people, as though every person that's going to come onto this patch is my people? So I was like, yes, I'm sure we can. But interestingly, we had right outside one of the churches, what we had was people from National Front waiting outside the church, and I thought there was going to be something that was going to take place. And in the end, eventually I said to him, do you know that my forefathers fought in World War II, and tried to explain to him what this meant. And the fact that you're standing in front of a poppy is actually degrading to me, because just like you're standing in front of it, my own, you know, I saw villages from Kashmir that were wiped out in World War II because they fought on the side of the British. You know, villages that could not see the next generation of people. Interestingly, the most beautiful thing was one of the people that was listening then came and joined the Black Lives Matter march. This is what we are as councillors. And I think I'd like to end on that, Florence.
Thank you for that. And I think we've almost come to the end of our time now. But yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you to Cleo, Magid, and Shahin, and also Charlie. This has been a really interesting and enlightening evening. Did I not say Cleo? I didn't say Cleo. Oh, I did.
I did.
Yeah, Magid said mouthing Cleo at me, and I was like, I said Cleo. But thank you, all of you. yeah, it's been really interesting and enlightening, and I know our councillors in Lambeth quite well, and it's been really great to hear from councillors in other areas. And yeah, hopefully some people listening tonight will now stand for the council, and if anyone who's listening is interested in standing for the council, you can I think in the Action Network email there should be a link that you can email, but you can contact me or any of our current councillors. We'll be really happy to talk to anyone about standing for the council, and also how we can support you if if you've got kids, or if you think maybe you're not going to have the time or it's not for you. Like, we really want to support anyone who wants to be a Green Councillor to be a Green Councillor. So we will do what we can. And I think Darren has put some links to our next action days in the chat. So if you're free for any of them, please come down. So yeah, thanks for everyone for coming, and thank you to our speakers. Bye.
Bye everyone.
Thank you for organising, Florence.
Thank you, Florence.